because it was really fascinating to see how strong the opinions were.
Chill out.
No, I'm not here to tell people to chill out.
I am.
Before the sun even crept over the horizon, Special Forces Season 4 had already begun its first battle. And it didn't need a single obstacle course to get there. The phones were still in hand. The uniforms not yet issued, but the air was already buzzing with tension. Cast members were hyping each other up on social media, fire emojis, little jokes, playful comments. A camaraderie was forming. Or at least, that's how it looked. But in the middle of all that noise, one silence stood out. No tags, no shoutouts, no warm welcome for Kody Brown. His name sat on the sidelines, untouched, as if invisible. Then came the comment, just a casual note from another contestant, tossed into the feed like nothing, light, breezy. The kind of thing you scroll past without a second thought, but for viewers, it landed heavy. Almost like a warning shot. Maybe it wasn't meant to sting, but for fans who know Kody's history, it was impossible to miss the weight of it. Kody doesn't take well to being sidelined, he never has, and so, before the first shout from a drill sergeant, before a single rope climb or plunge into freezing water, the real test had already begun, not in the mud or under the scorching sun, but in the fragile arena of ego and respect. That's the cruel beauty of Special Forces. No past victories matter here, no fame, no followers. No glittering resume can shield you. The show is built to strip you down until nothing's left but grit and willpower. Everyone wears the same uniform, faces the same drills, suffers under the same brutal standard. The only question is, can you carry the weight, yours and someone else's, without breaking? So when Kody began the season already marked as the outsider, and that throwaway comment dropped like a spark on dry grass, it was clear reputations were already being written before the mud, before the sweat, before the screams. It had already started.
And that is going to make for fantastic television. And Kody himself has said that we will see him full on sobbing.
For women who've been around long enough to recognize how group politics can turn on a dime, this setup felt almost deja vu. One offhand comment and suddenly the balance shifts. A man used to holding the reins finds himself in a space where the reins don't even exist, while everyone else seems perfectly content steering without him. And if the atmosphere felt this tense when the cast was still polished, caffeinated, and scrolling their phones, just imagine the tone once all that comfort disappears, when the only thing keeping you afloat is the respect you fight to earn, one brutal task at a time. Because here's the thing about Special Forces, the competition doesn't always begin on the training ground. Sometimes it starts in the shadows of social media, before the boots hit the dirt, before a single order is barked. In the days after the cast announcement, feeds lit up with mutual congratulations, contestants tagging each other, swapping hype comments, posting playful back and forths, building that we're in this together vibe that usually bonds a group, heading into something grueling. Except when it came to Kody Brown, the current stopped. No tags, no banter, not even a quick let's go on his own announcement post. It wasn't a grand conspiracy, at least not according to insiders. More likely, it was just personalities naturally sensing up in the pre-show glow. But perception, that's everything, and from the outside, it sent a message loud and clear. When you're one of the only names in the lineup not getting that pre-show boost, it doesn't feel like a fluke, it feels like the first crack in the wall, the first whisper of disconnect. And once the label of outsider starts to stick, shaking it off becomes nearly impossible, especially in a format where unity isn't just for show, it's survival. Meanwhile, others were thriving in that online camaraderie. Jude was busy trading encouragement, her energy weaving trust long before the drills began. Her mother, Teresa Jude, was just as active, sliding into comment sections and building bonds before the uniforms were even handed out. That warmth, that visible solidarity, stood in sharp contrast to Kody's quiet corner of the internet. And side by side, the difference was impossible to ignore.
So, I want to preface all of this for you guys who, there are a lot of people who are like, I'm not watching the show because so-and-so's on it or whatever. I would challenge that.
For longtime Sister Wives fans, the whole setup felt like a rerun of a story they'd seen before. A man who once moved through life with a built-in inner circle suddenly standing alone, stripped of that safety net. On Special Forces, that isn't just awkward, it's dangerous. Out here, perception has teeth. If your fellow recruits don't feel naturally drawn to you, that means fewer hands reaching out when you're chest deep in water, dragging a sandbag, or clawing your way up a wall in the dead of night. And that's where the real risk begins. In an environment this brutal, perception turns into reality fast. If people think you're hard to connect with, they won't try to bridge the gap. And when the punishment tasks pile on, that small social crack becomes a canyon. Suddenly, It's not just a cold shoulder, it's an actual disadvantage. The first warning sign was the Instagram silence. But the second came wrapped in something far more subtle just days after. Season 4's cast announcement, Judici slid behind the mic for her Casual Chaos podcast. She was glowing, buzzing with excitement, talking up the intensity of the challenges. The spirit of the group, the strength she saw in everyone, her tone was warm, full of praise until a single sentence shifted the energy. I can't even name one person I really didn't get along with on this cast, she said with a laugh. But there were definitely some people who could get under your skin a little bit. It was harmless on paper, but listeners leaned in. They didn't need a name, they had the breadcrumbs already. And in the echo chamber of social media, those breadcrumbs turned into a trail leading straight to Kody Brown. Insiders swore Ja wasn't aiming for blood. She's too seasoned in the reality TV world to throw a grenade without purpose. But placement is everything. One line like that doesn't need to be sharp, it just needs to exist. If she wanted to soften it later, she had the out. She could brush it off as nothing more than minor annoyances, sleep deprivation, stress, the usual frictions. But in that preseason buzz, it was gasoline on dry grass, because on Special Forces, the drama doesn't have to be loud. It can be whispered, suggested, left for fans to stitch together, and in that moment, they were primed to watch Ja and Kody's every move, waiting for sparks, even if the cameras never gave them a fire. Meanwhile, Gia's mother, Teresa, didn't hold back her admiration for the cast. She called the group inspiring, united, resilient. Side by side, the mother-daughter duo looked seamless, bonded, already building the kind of trust that translates into survival under pressure. And against that, there was Kody, framed not as part of the circle, but circling it on the outside. Watching connections form where his own seemed to falter. It wasn't said outright, but the contrast told its own story, a subplot already humming before the first challenge had even begun.
And every single person we talked to that had done it said it was way, way harder than it even shows in the edits.
Yeah.
Like 10 times harder.
In reality TV, perception isn't just part of the game, it is the game. And before the plane even touched down in Morocco, the perception of Kody Brown had already been framed. He wasn't walking in as a blank slate, he was walking in with a spotlight, one he hadn't chosen, but one fans were already trained on. Every glance, every silence, every harmless exchange had the potential to be spun into a feud. And on Special Forces, where teamwork can mean the difference between completing a brutal task or landing in the failure lineup, that's a dangerous weight to carry. Gia's breadcrumb had planted the seed, but what came next? That was the confirmation. If Gia's remark hinted, Brianna Chickenfree's bluntness shouted. During an Instagram Q&A, the Barstool podcaster was asked directly about Kody. Her answer was short, sharp, and left no wiggle room. She and Kody didn't exactly get along, no cushioning, no, it was all in good fun. Just a clean line in the sand. For viewers, it was gold. Suddenly, the whispers weren't just speculation, the tension had a voice. And because Brianna's reputation leans unfiltered and unapologetic, her words carried more weight than casual gossip. Fans already knew she'd meshed easily with others, Ja included. That contrast made her blunt admission about Kody ring even louder. This wasn't a fiery explosion. Insiders insisted it wasn't camp-wide chaos, but on Special Forces. Even a quiet disconnect matters. You're constantly thrown into pairs and teams, forced to rely on people who are, at best, temporary strangers. If those people don't want to invest in you, every task gets twice as heavy. Every wall feels taller, every mile feels longer, and the optics were impossible to miss. By the time the season even started, two castmates in different ways had signaled distance from Kody. For viewers, the stage was set. How would a man struggling socially survive in a competition built on unity? The uniforms weren't even on yet, but the social temperature was already climbing. Then came the stripping down, not metaphorical, literal. Once you enter the program, comfort vanishes, no phones, no internet, no escape. Even seasoned reality stars admitted the first hours were a shock. Sean Johnson East and Andrew East, one of the married couples on this season's lineup, gave fans a glimpse into just how raw it gets. Everyone is issued the same uniform, the same regulation gear, no favorite hoodie to hide in, no lucky sneakers tucked in a bag. You're allowed just 5 personal items. Think toothpaste, deodorant, a hairbrush, that's it. Nothing sentimental, nothing to soften the edges, and then the real gut punch, everything else is stripped away. No books, no music, no comfort items, no outside voices to vent to, just the walls, the cold, and the strangers standing beside you. Sean and Andrew didn't sugarcoat it. Those first hours were 10 times harder than even they expected. And they walked in knowing what was coming for Kody. The silence of social media had already painted him as the outsider inside those walls, stripped Of every cushion and every crutch, that perception threatened to harden into reality. And once it does, in this game, there's no place to hide.
It's such a rare experience to have in this day and age, you know what I'm saying? Because whenever we meet someone new at a business thing, it's like, oh, I wonder who they work for again, and then you kind of get the vibe of what they're about. This, it's just like, no, we're spending time.
For someone like Kody, insiders whisper the adjustment may have cut deeper. He's built a public life on control over the image, the framing, the story told about him. From the way he speaks to the way he styles his hair, every detail has been part of a carefully managed presentation, but on special forces. All of that is stripped away. No styling products, no wardrobe choices, no lifeline to a friendly voice on the phone. Just the raw, unvarnished version of yourself, and that's the point. The uniform isn't about fashion, it's about psychology by erasing individuality. On the outside, the show forces you to reveal yourself in other ways, how you act, how you speak, how you react under pressure. Those become your only markers of identity. For some, it's freeing. For others, it's terrifying. Because armor is only missed when it's gone, and suddenly every twitch, every flinch, every word spoken is your calling card at first. When the adrenaline is high and the novelty still feels shiny, the loss might seem tolerable, but as days stretch into grueling nights and the drills stack one on top of the other, that missing comfort starts to erode morale. That's when bonds matter most. Had Teresa. Brianna slipped easily into her circle, but Kody? He was staring down the prospect of enduring those long, comfortless days without a single built-in ally. And the stripping down didn't stop at the physical. Before a rope was touched or a wall was scaled, every recruit faced something designed to peel back the inner layers, the psychological evaluation. According to Sean and Andrew East, it wasn't a box-checking formality, it was invasive. Deliberate, the evaluators came prepared, armed with headlines, past scandals, and the kind of private missteps most contestants would rather bury. Their job wasn't to politely skirt around those topics. Their job was to press until they found what made you squirm, because on this show, the test isn't just about muscle, it's about breaking points. The evaluations become a blueprint mapping out where each recruit might crack, and giving the instructors a roadmap to push them to that very edge. For some, it's a breakthrough. For others, it's a nightmare. For Kody, it loomed like a trap. With over a decade of reality TV behind him, his life has been dissected more than most. The marriages, the separations, the resentments, all played out on camera. On Sister Wives, he could spin, redirect, fight back against how the narrative was framed, but here he had no edit, no cutaway, no second take. If the instructors decided his fractures were the weak points worth prodding, he'd have to face them in real time. And the timing couldn't have been sharper. This season filmed in early summer, and sources say much of Kody's own family only learned about his participation when the public did. If that's true, he walked into those evaluations carrying not just the pressure of the show, but fresh tension simmering at home, an invisible weight the cameras were ready to capture. That kind of emotional baggage isn't something you can check at the barracks gate, it follows you. And inside the high-pressure world of special forces, it tends to surface in ways you don't see coming. Those psychological evaluations weren't just about personal growth. They shaped the way recruits viewed one another. If someone came across as guarded, defensive, or evasive in those first sessions, that perception lingered, coloring how teammates approached them once the drills began. For someone like Kody, already walking in with the shadow of outsider status, that gap only widened. And nothing in those sit-downs could prepare him for what came next, the reality of facing challenges without the built-in support network others leaned on. Once training kicked off, the natural partnerships became clear. And Teresa Giudice were the standout example, moving almost as one. They read each other effortlessly. One adjusted when the other faltered, one encouraged when the other's pace slowed. It was quiet, instinctive teamwork, and magnetic to watch. Brianna Chicken Fry had her circle, too. She connected quickly with castmates who shared her energy, joking between drills and swapping stories whenever downtime allowed. Those small moments of camaraderie acted as a buffer against the program's relentless grind. Every smile, every "you got this" chipped away at the isolation the show is designed to create. Kody, though, didn't have that cushion. With no preset ally and little chemistry forming in the early days, he was left to tackle challenges on a partner-by-assignment basis. Insiders note that this constant rotation is exhausting in a format built on trust. Each new pairing meant recalibrating, learning a partner's strengths, weaknesses, and how they responded to either blunt orders or quiet support. Worse, if a partner already carried doubts about you or had absorbed the preseason chatter, you were starting from behind before the first obstacle was even in sight. On Special Forces, trust is more than morale, it's survival currency. When you know someone has your back, you're willing to push harder, take risks, dig deeper. Without it, self-preservation takes over, partnerships become transactional. Teamwork a box to check instead of a lifeline to grip, and that difference shows not only in how challenges are handled, but in how instructors read the group dynamic. For viewers, the contrast was stark. One side of camp traded encouragement and private jokes, while the other where Kody often stood looked like a solitary march through hostile ground. And as the days dragged on, those alliances only solidified. The real test, though, came when the uniform itself stripped away the last traces of individuality. By the end of the first few nights, the novelty had vanished, replaced by the grind. Everyone looked the same, fatigue stained with dirt, boots scuffed from rough terrain, hair matted from sweat and helmets. Makeup, fashion, personal style all gone. There was no visual shortcut left to stand out. The only thing separating one recruit from another was how they carried themselves under pressure. This is the moment where character begins to outweigh charm. When all the polish is stripped away, every decision, every move is magnified. Who slips extra weight onto their own shoulders so a teammate who's faltering can keep pace? Who volunteers for the grim, thankless jobs no one else will touch? Who manages to stay calm when orders are shouted sharp and fast, while adrenaline is already spiking through the group? These are the moments the instructors lock onto, and the viewers at home, too. Ja and Teresa seemed to thrive in this bare-bones atmosphere. Their encouragement didn't need a smile staged for the camera to hit home. It lived in the way they moved in sync, in the way they tackled problems as a unit. Together they set a steady rhythm inside the storm. Against that, it became impossible not to notice those who moved like they were only out for themselves. For Kody, the identical uniforms may have been their own kind of enemy on Sister Wives. He could lean on his presence, on how he carried himself, styled himself, how he used body language or staging to cement authority in a scene. But here, none of that mattered. Everyone looked the same, mud streaked across their clothes, faces scraped, straps biting deep into their shoulders. There were no shortcuts, no visual reminders of status. Respect had to be earned in the mud, moment by moment, in ways the edit could never soften or reframe. Whispers from inside say this is where the cracks began to show. Some recruits leaned hard into the group, offering help before anyone had to ask. Others, cautious of burning out, tunneled into their own survival, and in a place where survival itself hinges on the group, those differences stood out sharply. The instructors have a talent for pulling those contrasts into the light, elevating the natural team players and turning up the pressure on those who resist. But the biggest magnifier of all isn't drills or mud, it's emotion. When Kody himself teased that viewers would see him break down in full sobs, curiosity spiked. This wasn't some leak or slide dig from another castmate, it was Kody, planting one of the season's most intriguing hooks himself. An unusual move from someone who's spent more than 10 years carefully curating how much vulnerability the world gets to see and hear. Tears aren't just about sadness, they signal breaking points. Special Forces is designed to strip you to the bone. Yes, the physical demands are crushing, but it's the mental grind that cracks people open. You're sleep-starved, either freezing cold or sweltering hot. Your body aches in ways that stretching can't fix. The group dynamic, whether it feeds you or drains you, never lets up. No phone calls, no comforts, no escape. Tiny irritations balloon into massive storms, so when someone finally collapses into tears, it's almost never about one sharp blow. It's the weight of everything stacked together. For some, that collapse becomes a breakthrough. The instructors reframe it as a turning point, a moment to rebuild resilience from the rubble. For others, it's the edge of the cliff, the sign they've hit their ceiling and can't climb further. Which one Kody's tears will represent? That's a question only the edit can answer. Meanwhile, Ja and Teresa seemed to hold their emotional line. If there were cracks, they never showed up in whispers, never leaked into preseason chatter. That calmness, grit without collapse, only makes Kody's admission look sharper. In contrast, everyone breaks down sometimes, but in this game, timing and visibility matter. Crying in private is one thing. Crumbling in the middle of a team fight is something else entirely, especially when your teammates are weighing, moment by moment, whether they can lean on you. Insiders hint that what we see on screen will be just the tip of something larger. A tearful moment might come right after a brutal drill, or a clash with a teammate, or an instructor digging into past failures. Without context, the audience is left to debate the meaning of those tears. And that debate, that endless parsing of what really happened, is what keeps people locked in week after week. With the premiere looming, one question towers over the rest. When the first episode drops, whose story will the edit crown? The man clawing to rebuild respect? Or the mother-daughter duo who never had to demand it in the first place? By the time September winds down and Special Forces Season 4 lights up the screen, every clue Every social media silence, every breadcrumb of tension will play out under the polished glare of production. The raw footage is already sealed, the instructors have made their calls. Producers are slicing together the final version, deciding which beats to spotlight and which to bury. And this season offers two irresistible arcs. On one side, a reality TV veteran walking in with a decade of baggage, trying to demand authority in a place where the only rank comes from carrying weight in the mud. On the other, Ja and Teresa Giudice, steady, quiet, consistent, winning the room without raising their voices, the offhand chill-out remark. The frozen Instagram tags, the sly breadcrumb on Gia's podcast, Brianna's blunt didn't exactly get along, the no comfort rules, the psychological evaluations, the lack of a built-in ally, the uniforms that erased status. Every one of these pieces has been setting the table. When the cameras roll, it won't just be about who passes or fails a drill. It'll be about dynamics, who steps into leadership without bragging, who bends instead of breaking, who buckles under the relentless pace. For Kody, the rope climbs and icy water may not have been the true battle. The real test might have been going from center stage star to just another recruit in a mud-soaked squad that couldn't care less about past fame. Respect here doesn't come from resumes. It comes from carrying the bag when your arms are on fire, hauling your teammate over a wall, pushing through when every part of you wants to quit. If you walk in expecting deference without proving you've earned it, the shock can be seismic. And when the breakdowns come, the story they tell depends on how the producers decide to frame it. Will Kody's tears read as breakthrough or as the final punctuation on a clash with a culture that doesn't bend for anyone? Either way, the premiere promises an answer to the season's central question: does respect land with the loudest demand or with the quietest consistency? So let me ask you, what do you think? Will Kody's arc be carved as redemption or as a cautionary tale of a reality veteran out of step with a new game? And if it were you, stripped of comfort and status, would you fight to be heard or let your actions carry the weight? Stay locked in, hit subscribe, because the next story is already waiting on your screen, and trust me, you don't want to miss it.